Superintendent Kleinert is there. I think the facilities planning group that advises the school board has been working for about 20 years on trying to, is that about right, that they've been working on it? And my question is do they think that this collaborative approach would be beneficial? Have they seen this presentation?
They have not seen this presentation. They were invited. We've got a couple of members here tonight. I think it's important, and Gary really said it well, we can't work in a vacuum. Funds are too tight for all of us to each do our own thing. And so I had just a couple of observations, and really the beauty of what Elaine is doing right now is we can look and should look 10 years down the road, what's going to happen to Moscow, and how can we provide our citizens with the best bang for their buck. And so that's one piece. I think the other piece for the short term is that Elaine's been working with Brooke Lowry and the Safe Routes to School already, and the city has done some fantastic things with providing safer routes to school. And that being sidewalks and the bike paths, we've done a great job in this community, and I think it has helped with our walkers. And, Tim talks about the parents who drop their kids off 2 or 3 blocks, who live 2 or 3 blocks away from school. And we really need to continue to preach that kids need to walk to school, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we've provided safe routes for that to happen. And I want to thank Elaine for her work, especially with Brooke and Safe Routes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm on a roll here.
All right.
No, part of it is that I kind of got the idea that when you said you might be a little late, I was thinking you're kind of preaching to the choir, because in Moscow, Lena Whitmore School already shares a public park with the school. P&Z for years has, they looked at cul-de-sacs, said, yep, you got to put a staircase in here, you've got to put a shortcut for people to walk. That's been taken care of. The university has a kindergarten on campus. We're trying to get more public transportation so that there are fewer school buses. But, Mr. Kleiner already comes to the monthly breakfast with the university and the members of the city council so that we can kind of share information and stay up to speed on what's going on. So I guess, and you're talking about redoing old schools as opposed to building new ones, and we do have, as Mr. Kleinert points out, elderly buildings, and they will need a lot of help. So it seems like that should be our focus more than citing outside. But since the school district funding is totally separate from the city's funding, and the city doesn't have any extra bucks, I'm wondering how this, except from a theoretical standpoint, how this would work.
Well, trying to think which one to respond to first.
Well, I was just saying, giving you examples of where we've been playing the game.
Sure,
we've been
sure.
doing it.
You are correct that Moscow's already doing a lot of things right. I guess in my review of I reviewed 35 cities around the state, not all of them, but 35 in regards to policies that support the kinds of things that we've been talking about. And Moscow came in relatively good on that review, but not perfect. And I think that while you're doing some things very well, part of it is dependent on this group of people who's sitting here tonight. You're all very engaged. You're all longtime members of the community. You know people on the other side. As that begins to change over time, which it will, you might lose that institutional connection between the two if you don't formalize it in some way. So that would be one reason to do it. In terms of saving money, I would offer that as these old schools come up for perhaps renovation, there will be questions about whether or not it's worth renovating them versus building a new school somewhere else versus tearing them down and building a new school on site. And if you leave it up to the school district to make that decision without your input, then when you do get a chance for input, it might surprise them. It might, I just think it would in my experience, it would be a better process if you worked through those things together, and you might find, like we did in the city of Boise, that you have some compatible needs that you can work on together. By citing those three we would not have been able to build community centers. We knew we needed them. We'd identified those three specific neighborhoods as having less service, recreational service, than some more affluent neighborhoods. They were three of our lower income neighborhoods, and being able to site those community centers with those schools allowed us to provide service we wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise, because of the savings, because it was in one building and the maintenance and everything. So certainly you guys are farther along than some folks around the state. That doesn't mean that you can't do better. And it doesn't mean that as you turn over the years that will continue without some kind of institutionalization of the work that you're doing today.
Thank you.
As Elaine was speaking to the city's needs and the neighborhood needs for community centers and joint siting of those, she's also wearing the hat of a Boise City Council member, for those who may not know that. So she actually walks in your shoes as well. Tom, I saw your hand up also.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say that I look forward to the collaborative planning process that this technical assistance grant will allow to happen. And I wanted to point out a few things or make a few comments. One is that both the North and the South Lake Tahoe Highway districts have come up recently in the past few years with long-range plans, and where they overlap with the school district boundaries, it would be worth considering those issues as well. There's been some discussion about school busing and school buses, and one thing that I would really like to see different in the state of Idaho, so it's beyond our control perhaps in the short term, but I would like the state to allow school kids to ride on existing municipal bus services and be able to potentially transfer some of those transportation funds to existing systems so that we can increase efficiencies of vehicles that are traveling down the road. You get a bus going down the road handling non-school kids, and then a minute later there's a school bus going down the road and they're both not full. Mm-hmm. Or they might be going the same direction. It seems like we should be able to have some efficiencies by allowing just changing some policies that would allow for that to happen. So I'd like to see that change, and then potentially use the school buses for feeding the existing fixed route systems that we have in place. I know that we have a lot of interest on the City Council to improve our existing bus system, and I feel like those kinds of efficiencies would allow that to happen. And there are a few other things I wanted to mention. I think that the bike parking at every single school within the city of Moscow could be improved. A lot of the bike racks don't really handle bicycles very well, and they allow them to fall over and bend tires. And I would like to see the specific bike racks actually removed and then replaced with racks that help to support bikes better. And I think that's one other thing that would help encourage people to ride bikes to those facilities. I don't think it's just the kids with little tiny bikes that are riding there that won't get damaged as much. Mm-hmm. I think that some of the teachers and parent volunteers and others would prefer to have better places to park their bikes. So I'd like to see that changed. And there are a few other comments. I can't remember what I was going to say, but thanks so much for doing this work. I think it's
You
really
bet.
important.
I guess just two quick things in response. First, the school district, I suspect, would be happy to apply for a grant through the Safe Routes to School program to replace those bike racks. And if they had the city's support, that would be go a long way toward making that grant successful. I know you've used infrastructure money in the past to do sidewalks. I don't know if there's a sidewalk project that you have in mind coming up, but if you don't, that same money can be used for bike racks. So that might be an idea that you could use. In terms of the state policy, I will add that another piece of the work I'm doing is actually researching state policy and You're not wrong. The state of Idaho spends a lot of money on school busing, $66 million estimated last year. The final figures aren't in. And this for a state that says they don't spend any money on public transportation. So I think there is a lot of money being spent there. I think a fair amount of it is being spent in ways that could be more efficient. The problem actually isn't allowing kids on public buses. That is allowed, and school districts all over the state do it by contract, but allowing adults on school buses is actually the thing that's prohibited, and so maybe that's the...
Even school employees?
Even school employees.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to share a quick story to support that. I have a friend that worked as a substitute teacher and put his daughter on the school bus and then got in the car and followed the school bus into the school to teach. It made no sense.
No.
Absolutely no sense. It's just one more vehicle on the road. Fear. And you could have another adult in the school bus helping to keep things civilized.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are a lot of reasons why we need to, I mean, maybe there's some fear that creates those policies, but let's start to make things make sense. I mean, in the state, it's not, again, it's a statewide thing that we need to work on.
Yeah,
So thank
it
you
is,
for
anyway.
doing that.
So if I might be so bold, I guess what I'm hearing is that you think that it would be an okay idea for me to work with your staff to at least begin developing some of these tools and bring those back to you at an appropriate date. And in the meantime, work with the school district and the long-range facilities plan to make sure that they have all this information and as well. Is that, am I reading that
I know
correctly?
Walter has some questions or comments for you, too, but pertaining to what Elaine just asked, is there consensus up here for looking at that?
I would like to direct a question to Elaine
Please
about
do.
that
Please
specific
do.
thing. I had a couple of other things before that.
Sure. Sorry about that. I missed your hand, Walter. I would have not
I
jumped in so quickly.
winked at the mayor, and she knew I wanted to speak. Would your time be paid out of the existing grant?
Yes, I still have a fair number of hours in the existing grant.
If I may. I wanted to reiterate what Tim said. That had occurred to me as well about today's climate of, I don't want to call it fear, but you know what I'm talking about. When I was a child, we roamed over the entire 20,000 population community to the point that my father told me to stop it. You're in the alleys downtown. You're all over the place. You're in the riverbank. We were just fearless. Went everywhere and we're hopefully home in time for supper. But I don't think kids do that nowadays. I don't know. I haven't had children in school in 30 years, so I know, but I've got grandchildren, a lot of them. But I just don't think, I think there's some resistance that's going to be there. You solve all these infrastructure problems, you locate the schools, you do all of that, and you still may have that parent following that school bus in a car, even if he isn't going to substitute teach in the same school. Quickly, a question for Superintendent Kleinert, if I may, regarding safety busing. This is something that 1, 2, 3 of us up here on the council learned about in transportation when the business manager of the school district attended our meetings for a while. And I didn't know what safety busing was. But my understanding is that at that time, this was 6, 7, 8 years ago, we had safety busing because of the intersecting highways in Moscow, that 95 and 12 create barriers that are determined to be a safety hazard for children. And this may be addressed later on the Paradise Path presentation as well. But that's one reason that we have safety busing, if I'm correct, and still do.
Major arterials, busy streets, we do have safety busing, and then state code is 1.5 miles from the site, and then busing is offered. Idaho has one of a very, very complicated school busing program, and it's tough to make it work. It's very complicated.
And to follow up on that, if I may, the 3 council members up here that were on transportation were the ones that only had to find one other vote to get sidewalks built on Mountain View north of 6th Street, because that whole subdivision, Rolling Hills, et cetera, as it was built further out, was being safety bused because there was no way to walk to school short of either walking in the street or out through through a plowed field. I just have to ask, and I apologize for not warning you, is that safety busing still intact, or did it go away because that sidewalk got put in?
I can't answer that question, Walter.
But you wouldn't mind get back to me?
I
I'm
wouldn't
curious.
mind
I've
getting
never
back to
asked
you
it
at all.
before, but
Yeah.
we did that on purpose because of the safety busing, not just for health and smart, et cetera, but to see if we couldn't cut out a safety bus route and the money for that. But it's a perfect example of commissions running into inability to get councils to do things. So you get on the council and you do it, and it can work. Thank you.
I think it's really important to recognize that as our community works through a long-range planning process for our schools, that there is no effort to site new schools at this time. We have great buildings. We're keeping those buildings up, and part of the long-range planning process is to figure out a way to renovate what we have, to keep what we have in good condition with the resources that we have. So this is by no means a conversation tonight to build a new school, because that's not on the agenda. But we need to keep up what we have and provide safe ways for kids to get there.
And I think to supplement what the superintendent says, it's been a couple of weeks ago that we had the conversation with the Idaho Army National Guard about the prospect of co-location of facilities, and did it fit with something that a school district might do, or the ice rink people, or the North Latah Highway District, or Latah County, the fairgrounds, any of these kinds of things. Were there some possibilities? So I think long-range planning for public stakeholders in general is really important, and this process that would be laid out by the documents Elaine proposes to provide assistance in developing could be applied to other entities besides cities and school districts. So I think it could be a useful tool for looking at other things as well. Walter?
One last comment. As the spouse of a former school board president who attempted to close a school, it can be hazardous to your health. Thank you, ma'am.
Council, so in terms of Elaine's question a moment ago, is there some general consensus here about her taking a start at developing this document? Or, Gary, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, my only comment is that, as I said, I think it's a great idea to set some sort of protocols for, as public facilities are cited. It does necessarily require some sort of engagement from the school district, whether it is more actively engaging in subdivisions or a process like that. So I look forward, if the council's direction is to move ahead, working with the superintendent to try and find out what level of engagement that will be, so that at the end of this, if the council desires to have some sort of mutual commitment from each entity to proceed, then we'll need to have those protocols in place and agreed to by both bodies.
Okay. And Elaine, if you'll forgive me for a moment, city staff is more familiar with the structure of our volunteer commissions. Is there a place for this conversation at one of our commission levels, transportation or, something like that, planning and zoning? Is there a place for that conversation early on to mull over what drafts might start, and then have the City Council's Public Works Finance Committee take a look at it? Any idea?
Well, certainly we can inquire of staff. Again, I think this is a protocol for agreeing to engage rather than setting out the specific lockstep processes.
Sure.
So I think if it's just a matter of if a facilities committee is formed at the school district, Bill is on that long-range planning committee at this point. Certainly appreciate the city being extended that invitation by the school district. So certainly we can let them know. I don't know, and I'd have to talk to Elaine. I'm not really sure the form or format that this sort of agreement or this protocol would take. So I'm not really
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe
prepared to talk about that.
the forum already exists with Bill's involvement with the long-range planning task force, something maybe,
Could be.
I don't know.
Could be, yeah.
Okay, let's see, I saw Dan's hand
Yeah,
come up over here.
you already said what I knew that Bill was on the long-range planning task force, so thought that we kind of already had the start, and maybe as that morphs into the facilities planning committee, then perhaps when we can bring in some either council members, volunteer commissioners, or something into that committee as well to help forward that. And there's another volunteer committee member
Susan's
on
on
it.
there too, yeah. Okay.
And if I might add, I thank the superintendent for bringing up that they're not specifically looking at a new facility right now, but as you grow, as the city grows, as more subdivisions are added, you've already identified in your own comprehensive plan a lack of facilities to the southern side of the city, and it's quite likely that the school district will do the same. And it seems to me that knowing that and knowing that at some point in the future there will be a facility there would be really valuable for everyone.
So may we properly assume then you'll stay in touch with Bill Belknap as the city's liaison to the school district's task force, and with Superintendent Kleinert and with our city supervisor, so we are all kind of left in the loop and we can
Absolutely. That
continue
sounds
to work
great.
together.
Thank you
Any
so
other
much.
comments or questions? Okay.
Really appreciate your being so engaged.
Thanks so much for your presentation.
You bet.
You've come a long way to deliver it. So good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And we appreciate the representatives from our school district being here as well. Thanks. Good night.